Hello, and welcome to Mapping the College Audition. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA. That's Musical Theater College Auditions. Check us out at mtca.com. And today we've got Anne Josephson on the podcast, three-time alumni mother and world record-holding legend that she is. For our newer listeners, in these artist exploration episodes, we aim to explore the path to success that artists have forged and are still forging, and to tease out how their theatrical training has helped them to blaze that trail. And this is an episode I've been excited to do for a while. I was trying to get the timing right for this episode, since what I was most excited to talk about was there's all these wise areas that I think Anne could really touch on, but especially I want to try to highlight some of those alternate paths that our students can take, which is a lot harder than you might think, to actively shine the light on those paths in ways that I think that actually can be interesting and relevant to all of you, many of whom are focused right now on the path of being a professional actor, right? But as we'll talk about with Anne in this interview, we really do try to celebrate all the paths our MTCA students end up taking after graduation, which are varied and many. And I thought this was a really fun opportunity to try to highlight some of that. You're going to hear about Anne's three different MTCA alumni children, and you're going to hear about three completely different people and three totally different paths. One of them went to a very academic BFA liberal arts program in NYU. One went to a more conservatory style BFA in Pace, and one ended up bouncing around a few different college options before ultimately choosing to enter the industry at a younger age directly. Really different paths for different people. So we'll certainly talk about that in the episode. But I do think it's nice to see the perspective of someone who has adult children. You're going to hear that Anne just became a grandmother, in seeing how some of those kind of transferable skills that we always talk about, how they can directly be applied with different paths. So we always talk about those skills, but it's fun to see some of those awesome life skills actually paying off. Anne was actually one of the very first alumni parents I wanted to have on when we started doing this podcast, for precisely that reason. But I'll say the one thing that you won't get this from this interview, and it's why I wanted to hold Anne to be a little bit later, is you're not going to get an incredibly current perspective. For those who are looking more for the tips and tricks on this process and how it might apply to you today, I would advise maybe listen back to some of those alumni interviews that we've had with parents who did the process in the last 2 or 3 years, which we've had many of those at this point. I mean, Anne's last child just graduated from Pace in 2020. So Anne's perspective is certainly valuable in its duration, which is why I wanted to have her on, but not in its currentness. And of course, speaking of currentness, it was amazing to see so many of our families at Junior Intensive in person this weekend. What a blast. Thank you, of course, to those of you who came up to me and said hi, and that you're podcast listeners. That always means the world to me. I will just say, in general, the energy was amazing from the students and our coaches. Everyone was really inspired from the weekend. I will say the biggest overarching note, I said this at the meeting, but the biggest note I got from our coaches was how positive and game this class of students was. They felt like they kind of finally achieved that like over the hump quality that was lingering from COVID in some of the ways the students, during COVID maybe weren't as alive in the room or in their body. And, they just felt that it was notable this year that really it felt like 2018 or like 2019 used to feel in terms of how students felt alive and playful in the room. So kudos to all of you juniors and sophomores who did Junior Intensive. It's really awesome. And if you are listening to this episode on drop day, if you're listening on this Wednesday, there is still time, like literally 12 more hours to sign up for Junior Intensive online, which will be this weekend. For our seniors, please make sure you are checking out the webinar this week. We're going to talk about kind of debriefing Unifieds and what those next steps are. And please make sure, for all of you, those who do the webinar and not, though all of you should be doing the webinar, of course, but please make sure you're taking those deep breaths and not rushing your process. As I record this sentence, it is still mid-February, meaning there is lots and lots of time to still make your final decisions, to visit your schools and complete your process. Please don't rush to finish your process out of a feeling of artificial pressure from these schools. Find that right balance for yourself. You don't necessarily have to wait all the way up until May 1st. If you've completed your steps and you've arrived at your answer in a way that works for you, great. But it would be silly to put down a deposit before you've even gotten all of your results, which in mid-February, none of you have gotten all of your results. So please hear that. I definitely understand the urgency to have this process done, but you owe yourself a thoroughness to complete this crazy and beautiful journey that you've begun. All right, shall we get to it? I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with the great Anne Josephson. Well, we are so overjoyed to be joined by Anne Josephson. Anne has a BA from Barnard College and an MSED in educational psychology from USC. And Anne is a three-time MTCA alumni mother. As a human being, she's also president and CEO of JAG Gym, which is a gymnastics gym in LA. And we'll chat about some of her entrepreneurial awesomeness as well. But I do believe, I was looking back, I think you may be our only ever three-time alumni mother. We've had people do the process multiple times. We've had people do all the different, we certainly have people have siblings and do it twice. Many people have done it twice, but I don't know if we've had Edo do it three times. So amazing. And I can't wait to talk about all of this. But aside from kind of like your Guinness World Record of MTCA fame, that is your three kids that have gone through the process, I also am really excited, and I said this to you a little bit in bringing you on, is just being able to talk about some of your distance from the process. So many of our alumni parents who've come on so far have had recent experience and have tips and tricks, and they're going to know a more mature version of MTCA, a more specific version of this process. You're going to know some different perspectives on it. But I really hope we can talk a little bit about just the life perspective of kids who are graduated and in the industry and out of the industry and all those different things in terms of life. Okay, do you feel prepared enough, gassed up from that bio? Are you ready to dive in?
I'm totally ready to dive in.
And I can't wait. Okay, so before we dive into all your kind of wisdom and perspectives in terms of your kids, would you give everyone like a 60-second, Anne Josephson's childhood up to college, just what like your kind of journey in terms of relationship with theater and your relationship with gymnastics?
My
I'd love to
personal
kind
one?
of hear you. You, Anne Josephson,
Oh,
yes, you.
okay, sure. So I have zero background in theater.
Hell
I
yeah.
cannot sing. If I put a tune in a bucket and carried it, it would not stay.
We'll be putting that to the test later today. Don't you worry.
Oh yeah, that might terrify everybody. It might bring the cats out to join me, however. I got into theater because my oldest daughter, Samara, when she was 3, I took her to see a children's production of The Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
And she said right after she saw it, "I want to sign up and do this class." And I said, "Well, you have to be 5, honey. You're not yet 5." And we never talked really about it again. On the morning of her 5th
Yep.
birthday, she marched down the stairs and said, "I'm 5 today. Sign me up for that class."
Yep.
So off we went. We signed her up for the class, and she started doing youth theater. And she did that all through her childhood, as did her
Yep.
3 other siblings. Um, One of them pivoted out at about 2nd grade and went into gymnastics and regular school, and that was her thing. So I was one out of the performing arts, but 3 in.
This is what we call the black sheep of the family, the one who didn't do
Exactly.
use
Except now
MTCA.
she
I
makes more
understand.
money than all of us combined, so it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. She can support and feed her. Yeah.
But so yeah, and then when it came time for college, I grew to love musical theater, by the way, at this
Yep.
point. Would take the kids to New York a lot since I'd gone to school there. I had a lot of friends. We would go, we'd see shows.
Yep.
Um, didn't really think about it in terms of like this is where my kids are going to go for
Yep.
college at all. And then probably about Samara's sophomore or junior year, she started talking about like, well, what if I wanted to do this in college? And so I said,
Yep.
oh my God, I need to find somebody to help us because I do not know, nor did her high school know how to manage this. So
And
through
wait, we
some
were that process, and but I want to pause you because I want to get into that and do an overview of as your kids are entering it. But I want to hear just a little bit because you're too nice and you're moving right on from yourself. You think of yourself as uninteresting, though of course you're not. But can you give me just a little bit of your own back? You were into gymnastics. You
oh,
go to
okay,
Barnard. You get the master's. I'm just giving a sense of who you are as a person.
okay. I grew up doing gymnastics. I coached and I judged it, did that all through
Yep.
college, left it behind in college, went off, moved to LA, um, worked for a little bit, and then went back to school to get my master's degree in educational
Yes.
psychology.
Yes.
Then I started to work in children's television.
Yep.
Particularly, I worked with Barney the Purple Dinosaur. Thank
Yep.
God nobody can throw things at me since we're on a distant
Mm.
screen here. So I apologize if your children were addicted to it. Um, but I did that and then got married, had kids. And when I was pregnant with my 4th child, was coming back from a flight from Florida to LA, a red eye. My then husband and I exchanged the children in the airport because he had to go on a business trip.
Uh-huh.
And at
Same.
that point, I was like, something's got to give. Like, we
Yep.
can't live like this. So
Yep.
I stayed home then with my kids until my son went to kindergarten.
Yeah.
When he went to kindergarten, I was like, what am I going to do now? Am I going to go back to TV? Am I going to try something else? And at the time, my youngest daughter was in gymnastics, and the gym she was at, I did not like. They were like a great gym, but they were really mean to the kids. And I kept arguing with the owner of like, this isn't how you teach kids. You don't
Hmm.
shout at them. She's 5. Like, could you please stop shouting at her? And long story short, the woman said to me, well, if you think you know better, just go open your own gym. And I was like, hold my beer.
Tell me
Be
twice.
right
Yeah,
back.
exactly. My beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So I did.
Yeah.
And fast forward 22 years later from there, I run probably what is the largest gymnastics school in California, one of the largest in the country.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
And I think I'm going to editorialize here to say what is in one of the ways I think we connected, and especially in the early founding of MTCA, is that I think a similarly heart-centered gym and philosophy to MTCA in terms of, I think it's one of the reasons we're really connected. And so
Yes.
we'll maybe come back and talk a little bit about some of the jag of it all and the entrepreneurship and your mission vision and some of those things. But okay, I want to make sure you had a little bona fides established as we now talk about you entering this process in triplicate, not quite in 4, but in triplicate. So as the time Samara is now, you said sophomore year, starting to think about college. You were pretty ahead of the game, starting to think about this. Can you give us a state of your kids and their various interests in theater? I think I could do the years and separation, but I'm not 100% sure I'd get the, you have at this point, an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old.
Samara's the oldest. She's typical oldest kid, like perfect grades, perfect everything, like very type A. And she wanted a school that would balance both academics and musical theater. And it was a real struggle for her because she was admitted to Barnard, had a really hard time. Like, do I turn that down in order to go to NYU, which was the other school that she was admitted to that she was most interested in. And she was admitted to a few others, but that was the one that she was most interested in. She decided to go to NYU, thinking that she would be able to pursue academics and musical theater. I'll get into that later. It was a little bit not as much as she had hoped.
In terms of the duality, not as much as you hoped. That she didn't
not as much. She didn't get to do as much academics as she had hoped.
Mm-hmm.
Next, do you want to move on to the next kid?
No, though I wanted to, we're going to go through all of it, but give me a little bit of what you remember, and it's fine, I know it's a long time ago, so only what you can remember of Samara's audition journey. So your first time going through the process, what do you remember?
Yeah, I would say with Samara, I would probably try to hold up and contest if anybody has spent more money and time in MTCA than we did with Samara.
You're about to get some calls, Ann Josephson. You're about to get some people checking receipts with you. Yeah.
Because I so did not know what I was doing, and it was my first kid, and I was so absolutely clueless. And I very graciously had, you and Ellen and Leo and Adria, Telly, like all of these really wonderful mentors to my daughter who really helped her out and really helped her, get her feet under her. Samara is also a little bit shyer than I would say my other kids. So she needed a lot of that encouragement and that support and needed to feel over-prepared. So, we just went with it. In terms of her audition process, it was fun. We did unifieds both in New York, and we did New York, Chicago, and LA first child.
You were one of the first to do that. That's now not that uncommon, but that was uncommon in your day.
Yeah, so we did all of those. And she did a couple of on-campus ones. NYU.
Do you have a sense you remember about how many schools she did in total?
I want to say she probably did about 14 or 15 schools, which I know now is not that much, but back then it felt like
back then that was a lot. Well, this is before pre-screens, right? Samara wouldn't have done any pre-screens, or would she have done? No, not even like Michigan had one yet.
No.
And this is an era of MTCA also where you were paying us by check. We had very different. I mean, it was just in terms of even the systems of MTCA's guidance, it was much more individualized mentorship. Then we have a little bit more process and blah blah, which they all know that, so that's boring to them. But
we flew to New York a lot to do things live. I mean, we did some things. She did some things via Zoom, but we were
not even by Zoom, via Skype back in the
day.
It was
probably,
Zoom back then. But that's right, a little bit virtually. But we do a mix there. Okay, so she ends up at NYU. We'll pin Samara a little bit, and then let's talk about AB. So This is child number 2.
Child
Do you
number
remember now, it's one of the things I think which is a compliment I will throw at you, which will strike me so differently now being a father. But like, I just remember thinking, even as a very young coach to your children, of just like how impressive it was, how different you treated all of your kids.
They are
Um,
absolutely different kids.
they're different, but you recognize. I remember you telling me that, and I was like, "Yeah, of course they're different." But I was like, "Oh, it's actually not every parent that can recognize. I have 3 very different individual human beings, and they're going to need different. Like, they all had different coaching teams. They all had different. Like, but like you were like, they're going to use MTCA, but we're all going to use it really differently and have different guidance. So that's just a compliment I'll throw you. But do you remember what conscious adjustments you're making? Some of them probably to AB's individualism. But was there anything of like having gone through the process that you're like, all right, now I realize I'm going to do this process a little different in take 2.
Yes, I think so. I think with AB, well, thing one, I felt a little bit more confident that I understood how this all worked. I also really did understand the absolute randomness of
Yeah.
how these things go down. I mean,
We
there's
say subjectivity, but fine, randomness.
it's
I'll allow it.
it's completely random. These people are random. I mean, like they're people. You don't know what they
Yeah,
ate for lunch
they're
that day,
people.
if they were in a
Right.
good mood, a bad mood. I mean, it is so subjective. You're
It is
right.
not an objective metric of good actor, bad actor. I mean, yeah,
Nope.
dance and singing a little bit more objective, but the artistic, I like this one and don't like this one. You go, okay, well,
Yeah,
why? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Also, my kids had very, very different looks, so their types
yep,
were extremely different.
yep,
Samara was the, all-American girl next door. AB was the more edgy, um, sarcastic, really funny kind of
yep.
person, and beautiful, but funny. And then we'll get to Miles later because he's a whole
Mm-hmm.
other story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for AB was not particularly in love with school.
Yep.
She did fine enough in school, but she wasn't academics really weren't her thing. She auditioned far fewer schools because she
Right.
really just wanted to be in New York.
Yep.
Um, she did not get into NYU early, which
She did
was
NYU early decision, if I remember correctly,
correct.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
So she was really like, devastated at that, or maybe I was devastated. I think she was fine. Um, but then she ended up going to Pratt, because she also is an artist, and so she did that. She was only there a semester. Um, she didn't like it. She wanted to drop out. We allowed her to drop out under the caveat that she would take some acting classes and then
Yep.
reapply to college, to like the new school or something. And so she
Yep.
did. And she applied to the new school. She was admitted, but then she also got signed by representation,
Yep.
and she started auditioning and was doing extremely well. Like
Yep.
it was between her and the woman who got Supergirl.
Uh-huh.
And the only reason why she didn't get it was she was too young. And so
Mm.
she had like a lot of really, really,
Yep.
not success where she signed and got money, but success where we were like, okay, this is
Yeah.
working. And she
Enough
was like, I
momentum.
just want to
Yeah.
keep going with this.
And some real success. I don't know the timing exactly, but what was it? How I Met Your Father. She was
Yes,
on
and yeah, she
some
ultimately,
TV shows, and yeah.
she got some pilots that
Yep.
didn't get picked up. She did some commercials, whatever, but her biggest one was she got How I Met Your Father.
Yep.
And then unfortunately COVID hit and then the show was
Yep.
canceled.
Yep.
So that sucked,
Yes.
but that's show business, baby.
Yep.
And she's still auditioning a ton.
Yep. Still
Um,
in the industry, and now doing comedy and seems
right.
like
Yeah, she does
theater,
stand-up
film,
comedy,
acting,
she
etc.
hosts comedy shows,
Yep.
um she's extraordinarily creative. She makes clothes, she, has an Etsy store, like she does all of these other little things on the side,
Yep.
but acting is still her first love. She's writing also too, but acting is really her first love, and she has the ability to be told no 10,000 times,
Uh-huh.
and it
The superpower that all actors need.
and
Yeah.
honestly it is. I mean,
Yeah.
not that it doesn't hurt because it does. Like, there's
Yep.
times obviously she gets disappointed and
Yep.
but she has that
Yep.
thing, and she honestly has the thing of there is nothing else she wants to do.
Yeah. Well, and
Samara had
phenomenal talent, but
8
yeah.
million things else that she was also
Yes.
willing to do. She worked in production after graduation, she
Yep.
ended up going to law school, she worked in entertainment law, like, she just
Yep.
had other interests. Amy's interest is this. This is what she
Yep.
wants to do. So she is still plugging at it.
Yep. Wait, so slight pin in that because I want to talk about Samara's, especially after school life too, in terms of getting up to today and all those things. But amazing. So two already very different children, very different school experiences in terms of one going to a real university that's very liberal arts, about as liberal arts as you can while still getting a BFA. One going basically, let's say conservatory style, even though not all of it was directly to the acting and singing of it all, because some of it you're talking about design, but then really just taking acting classes and not going to end up graduating school. So
Correct.
two wholly different experiences. All right, let's get to Miles, now your third child.
Okay, so Miles is transgender, and when he started the process, he was still presenting as a girl.
Yep.
So he was admitted. He went through the audition process, quote, as a girl.
Yep.
He didn't come out until right before he went to college.
Yep.
So,
And was that true for you, timing wise, too? That Miles had not yet come out to you,
correct.
to the family?
Yep.
Okay, yeah,
Mm-mm.
I wasn't sure about that time because I think it was basically early college when it became public, or at least that was.
It was right
I was.
before he left for college
Yeah,
that
yeah,
he was public, and so
yeah,
he went to Pace. At the time, Amy Rogers was in charge of the program. She could not have been more supportive or more
yeah,
wonderful with Miles's entire transition.
yeah.
But it went from, you know, part of me, this is really like maybe not politically correct to say. I'm like, dude, why didn't you audition as a boy? You would have gotten into
Mhm.
all the places. You know,
You
like,
got your chances a little bit better.
yeah,
That's so
exactly.
funny. Though, of course, I think Pace, and especially Pace at that moment, a particularly great place for Miles in terms of,
Yes, it was.
this was an
And I will
era.
say, um, we had a really, really, really great experience auditioning at Carnegie Mellon,
Yeah,
where they were very, very honest with him. They were like, "We
yeah,
love you. We don't know what to do with you. We're not
yeah,
the right school for you."
yeah,
And I respected that so much,
yeah,
to the point that I actually wrote to them after this was all done and Miles was settled and thanked them like
yeah,
that what good people they were to not
yep,
just take my kid because they thought he was talented,
yes,
when they knew that it wasn't going to be the right program and that Pace was going to be the right program for him. And it was.
that's right.
It was a great program
Yeah,
for him.
great. Well, I was
Unfortunately,
going to ask that about that. The experience with Amy Rogers was positive for you and for Miles
amazing.
throughout school. Yeah, yeah,
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, everything from like at that time, Pace didn't have a gender neutral bathroom on camp on in
right.
the performing arts building. They built one for him.
Yeah,
Um, they were They were really, really terrific. I mean, were there a couple of people along the way who weren't so great? Of course. But
of course. Yeah.
overall, the people in leadership were wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, and I won't make you, comment on sort of the larger, all the issues surrounding Pace and Amy, but I do think it is worth noting in that conversation what was true at the time, that Amy was on the cutting edge of these conversations. I mean, Amy is the reason that pronouns were added
Mhm.
to resumes. I mean, we started adding it to our resume template after Amy was like, everyone should be doing this. Everyone will be doing this in 5 years. 2 years later, everyone else was doing it. Like Amy really was helping lead. It's not that long ago that this was a very odd and unusual thing in the sort of
Well,
general
I mean,
vernacular, but even in the theater world.
I could be wrong, but I think Miles was one of the first transgender musical theater students that was
Yeah.
open and out.
Yep.
Um, and now there are definitely many more, and he mentors a lot of them. But
Yep.
it was, they were all kind of just trying to figure this out as we went along, and including like, I mean, the things that are very gendered, like dance classes, like
Yes.
explaining that no, he's not going to be showing up in girl dance clothes. He's going to be showing up
Uh-huh.
in men dance clothes, and there
Yes.
were some issues about that.
Yep.
But we worked through it and they were great. And, you know, you can't blame people for what they didn't know at the time. So there were some things that
Yeah.
were really obtuse when you look back through today's lens of like, how did you not know
Right.
this? But the truth is they didn't know it. None of us knew it. We were all just trying to like figure it out as we went
Yeah.
along.
And, I mean, Miles is somebody who operates from such grace too, in terms of that, which is very helpful in those conversations and helpful in helping people help you. Is there anything in terms of your experience now, if you were going back, let's say Miles was now re-auditioning for whatever reason, you said you get it everywhere, but is there anything that you would do differently or consider differently in terms of, I was thinking about some of our parents of trans students, some of whom are listeners, who, when looking at colleges, and maybe you were thinking this already, for Miles, but of like, I don't know how successful you'd be in the South. I don't know how successful you'd be
Oh
in.
yeah,
People are very
yeah,
worried
yeah,
about school
100%.
experiences,
And
and
I mean, look, there's a lot of, without digging into the politics of everything, there's a lot of things to think about of, if you're sending your daughter to a school where she might not have certain rights, um,
right,
if she,
abortion rights or those kind of
reproductively or whatever. Like
yeah,
there are a lot of things to think about. And yes, I did think about very carefully. I really wanted Miles in a place where I knew that there was support.
yeah,
New York made a lot of sense because he had siblings there. There were also, I mean, honestly,
yeah,
if I'm being really candid, there were adults like you and Ellen and Leo. Like
yeah,
he had a support system. If something went funny,
yeah,
there were grown-ups he could call. And I'm a
yeah,
very big believer in community. That community really
yeah.
matters. So yeah, it was a pretty much foregone conclusion that he was going to go to school in New York if I could make that happen.
I love it. Okay, so then just looking back at the three processes, again, as someone who's a rare example of having gone through the process three times, is there anything that you feel like you learned in the third version, or if you had to do it a fourth time, that you would now be like, man, I really see going through this process as X, Y, and Z. Like, what is your perspective just having gone through it three times?
You know, my perspective is, I'm sorry, my dog is barking.
Oh, let the dog yap. Get in
Yes,
there, dog.
yes, she has things that she'd like to say.
I understand.
My perspective is I think that as much as I'd like to say I think I would be like much more calm, I don't know that I would be. I mean, like it's your kid.
Yeah.
Uh, they're 17, navigating something, and as much as people want to be like, oh, it's their process and they have to navigate it,
Hmm.
they're 17 and you're about to spend, $250,000 on
Yeah.
education.
Not with MTCA, to be clear. She's
No,
not
no,
saying she's
no,
going to
no,
afford a
yeah,
million,
yeah, no, with them,
but on education, yes, it's a huge
yeah,
investment.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you still are their parent. They still are children, and you do need to be involved. That's my
Yeah.
opinion. Maybe it's an unpopular one, but and it's a family decision because you're
Yeah.
taking family resources and family
Yeah.
energy and putting it towards this. So I think I would still be very involved.
Yes.
I definitely think by the time I got to Miles, I took all of this much less personally.
Yes.
Like, when Samar didn't get into a school, I was like, those bastards, how could they not want my baby? And now I just realized, like, I really came to realize, look, they only have X spots. They're
Right.
looking for X, Y, and Z.
Right. You're searching for a fit. You're searching for a fit. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about fit. It's about, but it also could be like if they knew that they had already 6 girls in their upper class that were blonde haired, green eyed, and 5 feet tall, which is what described Samara, there's not a space for
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't need that. That's not what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how good she is or she isn't, like that. That's just the way it goes. And, a lot of this is like, I mean, I went through the situation where everything from where like Samara was an excellent kid, excellent student,
Hmm.
whatever, but she was very much middle of the road, if I'm being really
Hmm.
candid. Love her to death, but she was not, she was great. Like she was really, really good at everything, but she
Right.
didn't have something that really stood out.
Yeah.
On the flip side, by the time I got to Miles had a lot more quirk and interest to him.
Uh-huh.
And so I went through the thing of where like he did get exceptions on the spot and he
Yeah.
did have, and that was also overwhelming.
Yes.
It's
You
all
didn't
just
expect it
emotionally
after
hard.
it was there.
Everything's hard. Please get a therapist.
Well, so we started this conversation off before we started recording about all the different kinds of therapy we're in. But it is, I mean, it's one of those things we've been talking a lot about with discovery recently and how you try to discover who you are and that you're taking these journeys. You know, Specificity is a really helpful tool in this. If you are a more specific person versus, I mean, you said middle of the road for Samara. It's also something that I feel like you can't force. I mean, it has to be authentic to yourself. You can't just be like, I'm gonna dye my hair blue because this is who I am or whatever. Like
Right.
there has to be some element of like, is this true to is this coming from a core of who you actually are? But certainly I do think, yeah, going through this process and feeling like somebody where you're like, well, I either know what to do with you, or to the point of Carnegie Mellon going, you're so interesting, I'm not sure we're equipped at this moment to deal with you. I think I'm impressed by the maturity of that was a much older faculty at Carnegie Mellon. I actually wonder how they would respond right now with Rick Ettinger, who's a trans head of the program, that in some ways
Right.
like maybe
No,
would have a
I'm
more
sure it's a
different
completely
experience.
different situation, but yes, it was a very I mean, they had been your teachers, like, they were really
They were getting long in the tooth.
yeah.
But and also but because of Miles's specificity, they were able to say it's a yes or it's a no, and I know that. Versus
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard if you feel like you're a really good student and you're doing everything right, but you're not actually extraordinary or messy in some way or something that is we go, what do I that specificity.
Yeah, and what was very, very kind and very sweet is they wanted him to know it isn't that you're not good enough to be here. Like, it's just we don't know what to do with you. And that was a tricky thing for them to say. They didn't have to say anything. They just could have
Yeah,
sent the rejection letter.
yeah,
And I really, really did appreciate that they, because also Miles did high school in 3 years, so he was doing this process at
yeah,
16.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they recognized that too, and they were like, really didn't want to crush him,
Mm,
um, because that was his first choice. I mean, he wanted to go there so badly.
mm. Well,
Um, but it worked out.
I'm glad it worked out. Okay, and we're not going to speak of Carissa, the black sheep, who didn't do MTCA at all, right? We're not. She's
Yeah,
gonna
no, no,
get
she just
no
graduated
airtime
from
on this
Georgetown
podcast.
Law, and she's doing litigation,
Boo,
killing
boo.
everybody. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's take a short break, and on the back end, we're going to unpin some of these pins. I want to get a little deeper into their life and career, and we'll I don't know silence your dog or whatever we have to do to make it happen. Okay, we're back with the amazing Anne Josephson, and we're going to unpin some of those. So we sort of pinned like they all went to school to varying degrees. They're all going to enter the industry, and now let's talk about where those four children are in the world today. We could even talk about Chris if you want to, in terms of the amazing success. But they're in and out of the business. You highlight that Samara is no longer in the industry, right? In terms of
No, nope. She
pursuing
was for a
acting.
bit. She
Yeah,
did, like I mentioned, she did production. Then she went to law school. She did entertainment law for a little bit.
yeah,
Really decided it wasn't for her. Went
yeah.
back to school again. Yay! Um, and
Wait,
is
wait,
now a
back to
therapist.
after law school?
Oh yeah,
Oh, I don't think I realized that.
she's like Pokemon cards. She's collecting them all.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah.
But yeah, no, she went back to school to become a therapist, and so
That's
she is
amazing.
now a therapist. She
It
she also is a new mom.
I was just
And her
gonna
husband
say it's
had my first grandchild.
it's so like it is so that is a weird thing to me. And Samara's not the first. We've had a number of kids, a number of I say kids, but kids who've had
Yeah,
kids, of our students who have had kids. And Lisi was one of my first students, who's one of our coaches who just had a baby last month. I mean, it's
it's
great.
insane.
Congratulations, Grandma.
Thank
Amazing.
you. Thank you.
Um,
But the good news, Charlie, she's 10 months old and she can sing.
that is a good. All right,
So
so you're gonna be the 4-time MTCA alumni.
yes, so the
As a
next
grandma
generation
coming
is
back.
coming. Yeah, she likes to sing, she likes to dance, she doesn't like to do much else.
I
So,
love it. Well, she got some time to figure it all out.
no,
But
we're
I'd love
gonna
to hear.
start coaching soon,
Oh, sorry. To get it. Yeah, we'll have
yeah,
to
the
get
toddler
another
program.
division for the toddlers. Yeah. I'd love to hear kind of just from your perspective, and again, because like when we look at the stats this year, many years out, the fact that 2 out of 3 of your kids are still pursuing acting is actually unusual. It's much more. You graduated BFA, it's less than half of students 5, 10 years out are still actively pursuing this industry, right? I do think to some extent it was kind of an unlock for me when I realized that of you know, when we started doing this, I thought my job is to get these kids into the most competitive programs they would, and then it sort of evolved into the program that's the right fit for them, but still toward success in the industry. It really became an unlock when I was like, well, what I'm really doing is helping them discover their collegiate fit and then their life fit for whatever they might end up doing, all those different paths. And
Yeah.
many of our students end up not pursuing. I do think our parent listeners, who a lot of people who are going to listen to this episode are going to be parents, they're going to understand my child might not end up being a professional actor. I look at these stats and I look, they might do that for a bit and then do something else, or might immediately do something else. I
Well,
guess
look,
I'd
I
love to
think
hear.
that's
Yeah,
true
you
with
go.
all of us, right? I mean,
Any degree. Yeah,
life is long if we're lucky, and we're going to have multiple careers. There's going to
yeah,
be different iterations of every single career we have.
right.
The irony is like Samara recently um went back to the stage for the very first time. She was in a
Get out.
production at a local church of uh the Christmas Carol, and
Yep.
it was her and like a bunch of people in their 70s and 80s, and it was the
Oh.
cutest thing in the world.
Yep.
And she loved it. It turned out that her music director from high school was the music director at this church, and
Yep.
that's how she ended up getting involved and doing it. And it was great. It was wonderful to see her up on stage again and just
Yep.
doing what she loved, and she was brilliant, and it was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Um, so there's all sorts of ways that
Yeah.
that, you know, these things can come back around too.
It's so true, and it's so fun. It's like it is maybe not unique to this industry, but it is specific to this industry. The sort of shame surrounding the idea of like, well, I guess you didn't cut it, you didn't make it. Where I'm like, I played college level baseball, and then now my baseball is I play in the Broadway show league. Like that's a
Yeah.
like that I still get to play. I'm never gonna love the sport. Did I end up making it my profession? No, very few do. And most people don't view that as a failure in the same way that people will sort of there's shame surrounding of, oh, I guess you couldn't hack it, you didn't cut it. We do that to ourselves in this
Well,
industry sometimes
I
for no
majored in
reason.
history in college. I don't do
You ain't
any.
doing nothing with history.
Yeah. I mean, in fact,
Yeah,
I've just other than watching it repeat,
yeah,
I'm not doing a whole lot of anything with it. So I think that just because a kid goes to school for acting, theater, musical theater, whatever, it there shouldn't be any shame that they
yes,
might pivot. They're choosing this when they're 17 and 18 years
yes.
old.
Yes. Well, and without giving you too much of a leading question, we so often on the pod talk about this idea of transferable skills. I wonder maybe specifically for Samara, like how do you see, because I pitch it as like, hey, I think this is true. This is why you should feel comfortable sending your kid to a BFA,
A
even when you look at these numbers to go, man, you can use this as a lawyer and as a therapist and all these other things. So how do you see some of the college level acting training as potentially helpful for her in
None
light
of my kids are afraid to public speak.
now? Hmm.
Not a one of them. They're all absolutely comfortable getting up in front of, whether it's a church group, a parent group, at their job, in court, whatever. They're all very comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Um, they find different ways to use those skills. Like, for example, one of the things that Miles does is he sings at a nursing home for people with Alzheimer's weekly because it pays they had to learn all the old standards. So he
Uh-huh.
has the 2020s and the 2030 music
Mhm.
down. And it turns out, music is one of the last thing that goes in
Yes.
people who have in cognitive decline. And so going in and singing those old songs with them, um, yeah, makes them so happy, makes him so happy because he's up there and he's getting to perform.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I just think about the amount of good that he's doing by doing that. And I'm like,
Yep.
that's amazing. And that's
Awesome.
because he had a BFA where he had to learn all those old songs.
Yep. I want to I want to talk more about this, but unpin because you mentioned, hey, Samara's experience with NYU not being as educationally exciting to her because it should kind of get us up to the college level. What was that experience in terms of? Is it just that she wanted more total academics than she got?
Yeah, she did. And, the way that the prerequisites for certain classes were that,
Mm-hmm.
she didn't, and she had a very specific schedule as they do at NYU where they have
Yeah.
to be with their cohort doing their thing. She wasn't able to necessarily get into those classes because she
Yeah.
couldn't get the prereq and so on and so forth. Um, I think for Samara, uh, I think for any kid that's really academic, which obviously she is, given all of the
Yeah.
degrees she's gone on to get, it is a hard sell. It is a hard, like, I know schools
Yeah.
want to say, oh, they'll have plenty of time to do academics. The truth is they don't.
Right.
The
Right.
BFA is really demanding.
And NYU may be the most so of any BFA school. I mean, in terms of their meaning they do have more room than some other BFAs, but still within the BFA standard, it's not a BA. It's never going to be.
No, no, it is
Yeah.
absolutely not a BA.
Do you think if she could go back, she would have gotten a BA? Would she have just done a BA in theater or something that she
No,
could
I
make it
think
again?
I, she and I talk about it a lot. I think she needed to do this. I think she would have always
Hmm.
wondered what if
Hmm.
she hadn't. And you know, in our family, we have a saying: change one thing, change everything. She's
Hmm.
happy with her life. If she changed it, who knows what would have happened?
Right.
I mean,
That's right.
it's okay. This was her experience. It
Yep.
was, yeah. And there were things about it that were great. I mean, she's made some
Yep.
of her closest friends, like that she still sees all the time. And, so, I
Yep.
mean, college is about so many things. It's not just about what you're learning. It's about who you meet for the rest of your life that become your tribe.
Yeah, I wonder, and so yeah, I'm sort of transitioning into the idea of like, yeah, the life skills that you pick up in this, but and then also some of your mission behind JAG and some of the sort of things that you do. How do you see, when you talk about now that longer lens of what they've developed and like what the skills are that you've needed as a human being and they needed as human being, the things you help for your kids. How do you, or for your kids, meaning your students, your JAG students,
Mhm.
how do you sort of see the theatrical training fitting into that? Or I guess how what are
I
the things
see
you
it
go, I
I see
got
it
from
very clearly. So one of the very, things I'm very passionate about in with JAG is we're spending time with these kids, these athletes, especially the ones that are most, dedicated. They're with us 20 hours a week.
yeah,
um, who we are and how we treat them, we're very much helping develop their self identity and their self
yes,
worth. And it's so much more than gymnastics. They're going to stop eventually. They're going to do the last back handspring at some point, but they're going to go on
hmm,
and be people.
yeah,
I have to say, and this is not a sappy plug for MTCA, it is a genuine plug. The adult mentors that came into my children's life, I'm like going to cry, were incredible. um, so lucky to have had you all be a small part of my kids growing up. Um, they've
you're
always
making me cry.
I know,
Yeah,
well, we're all gonna cry. So this is the crying portion of the podcast. Um, but everybody made them feel seen, everybody made them feel valued. You guys were willing to be there for them post graduation of
yeah,
MTCA for advice, for I need help with an audition, whatever.
yeah,
Um, yeah, just such good people. Um, and I think one of my parenting philosophies has always been I can't do this all on my own. I need a really, really strong village. And
yeah,
MTCA has been and continues to be part of our really strong village. I mean, Samara graduated from high school in 2011. It's
mm,
2026, and I'm sitting here having this conversation. You thought to call me,
yeah,
and say, hey, would
yeah,
you do this? Like, and that I'm so honored that I get to, but
yeah.
it's amazing. It's an amazing organization. You guys are killing it. You're doing so much more for kids than just getting them into college.
I mean, thank you for saying that. That is so gratifying to hear, and I mean, it is the way that I feel like I now view my child's education. I mean, like, yes, I care about the math. Right now, we're worried about the learning to read and the math, and
Yeah.
I have a 4-year-old. But I do think about that of like, what kind of person are you going to develop into, and who will be the mentors in her life. I mean, I was telling Marcus recently. Marcus is one of our newer coaches, who's become this huge part of our leadership team. Actually, I don't know if Marcus might have been there when Miles joined. Maybe Marcus would have just joined around then. But he was sort of trying out this philosophy thing. He's like, hey, I think our job isn't just to get kids into school. It's like to prepare them for day one of school. And I was like,
Yeah.
yes, and it's also like, at least I think it's not just day one of school, but the next 50 years of their life and their career. And if we're doing that self-discovery thing, right, that we may help them discover that acting's not for them. And we're not going to actively do that to a 17-year-old of like, get out, but the we're helping lay that foundational discovery moment that can snowball into school and all these other things. And it does feel like sometimes some of that vision stuff, like you hear companies say that, and it's like, just all right, just sell me the Coca-Cola or whatever it is. That is not necessarily that every mission or vision, but I
Yeah.
feel like we get to do that. And maybe you get a little bit of that experience with JAG too, of like, we really do get to spend some vulnerable, intimate moments with. It feels like an awesome responsibility at times to be like, oh, this is a moment for you, and you choosing this path and choosing how you're going to navigate this rejection or do that. It's sort of it can feel really big.
I mean, look,
Yeah,
I'm very fond of saying I'm in the job of helping kids grow up. I happen to use gymnastics
yeah,
for it.
that's right.
And
This is the
and I
medium,
and I
but yeah.
and all of that said, I'm an incredibly competitive person. I want to win this podcast. I don't know how I win,
Yeah,
but I
of
want to win
course.
it. Yeah.
You're doing it. Whatever
I
you're doing, you're
want
doing it.
kids
Yeah.
to do well gymnastically, but I care so much more about who they are as people and
Yeah.
being humane in the process of trying to
Yeah.
get excellence. And I think that
Yes.
that is also something MTCA has consistently from, back in the early days that I was there doing it, applauded every kid no matter what school they got into. There was no hierarchy of these are the Starbelly Sneetches and they're the special kids because they
Yeah.
got into the,
Yeah.
one of the top 5 schools or whatever. Everybody
Yeah.
was celebrated. Um, and, you know, we've also all been in this long enough to know a lot of times the kid that went to quote the lowest ranked
Ain't
school is
that the
the one
truth?
who's friggin' working now, and the
Ain't that
kids that went to the top
yeah.
schools aren't working. Like, you just don't know.
That's right. The journey is long. All right, we have to exit the crying portion and the complimenting MTCA
Okay.
portion because it's too much. It's overwhelming me. Can you do a little bit of can we talk about, for AB and Miles who are still actively pursuing this business? I mentioned that idea of, I think both now are a comedy is part of their life, which,
Yeah,
is not
more so
something
for AB
I,
than
of
for
course, am
Miles.
hilarious, but
Yeah.
more for AB
Um,
than for Miles. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Miles does comedy just to as a way to, like, keep himself, again, busy and active. AB,
yeah,
it
yeah.
does it a lot more. Um,
And more from a professional perspective of like,
yes,
hey, I
and she
yeah,
does stand up, which is, you think acting's hard, man, stand up
yeah.
is brutal.
In an industry that I don't think people really understand how you get into. I mean, there now exist these like comedic art programs, a couple of them that exist at the college level, but I don't. Most people who are successful stand-ups do not have a degree in it. Most people,
No,
it's
no,
you hit the
what they
ground
do is
and
they go from show to show to show to show
yeah,
every night,
grinding and
up and down
sweating and
Brooklyn
learning and
and
yep,
Manhattan, and,
yep,
sometimes they're doing shows for, like, 3 people in the audience,
yep,
who might not really be their, typical audience, So,
yep.
I mean, AB is a lesbian, so a lot of her jokes are around being lesbians, and a lot of times she'll be sitting there doing these jokes for people who don't
That's
think
not
that
their
her
cup
life
of tea.
exists. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So it builds a lot of character.
yeah,
Um, and I think that again, it has just made her really fearless in auditions. Like
yes.
she's just able to go into an audition now and whatever, it doesn't matter because at least nobody's gonna throw something at her in an audition.
Yeah, totally. I guess I wonder, and I've tried to describe this angle. It's maybe just like one kind of unveiling or unlidding for me of like the industry as a whole. That like when you go to acting school, or musical theater school, you think like Broadway, and you think TV and film, and agents and pilots, and I guess I'm wondering like what AB's perspective and Miles' perspective is on the like what is quote unquote the business when when you see stand-up comedians getting pilots and then you see people who didn't go to school at all and then you see the people who went to Michigan and have the Broadway show that happens in the musical theater world and then like and also especially today, and this is where I had that sort of perspective going 15 years ago or 20 years ago, that it's a different experience now of like what is the internet and what is a Netflix show and what is it Hulu. So I guess I'm wondering like how how are they sort of thinking of pursuing the industry in that way now?
I think both of them have a pretty good attitude of, whoever will pay me to do this art, I will go to. Like
Hmm.
they're not terribly precious about it. Miles is definitely still more of a theater guy.
Yeah.
Um, that
And
is
more recently out of school too.
more recently
Miles had graduated right before COVID,
20
right?
2020, no, during COVID. He
2020
graduated
during
by
COVID.
himself in his apartment in Brooklyn. It
Oh
was
my
the
god.
saddest thing in the world. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
MTCA 2015 means yeah, 2020. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yep.
he also didn't get to showcase, which was a really, really hard thing.
Awful. I mean, talk
Um,
about both of your kids pursuing it. TV show done, showcase gone. I mean, and my wife at the time was in a Tony nominated show and that was canceled. You're like, it's really
yeah. Yeah. No,
it robbed a lot of people from
yeah,
this
and then
industry.
then you have the writer's strike and all. I mean, it's
Yeah.
been a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think that you know neither of them are huge fans of commercials. Both of them have done them because they do pay
Yeah.
well, but that is probably the one thing that they both are like. Ugh.
Yeah.
But other than that, they're kind of open to whatever.
Yeah, the commercials. There's a specific thing that is being commoditized that can feel kind of gross. I mean, it's just like literally something you go in, you're like, it is just about what size I am. Basically, it's like you're looking
Yeah,
for height and weight because I'm like, there's all these different versions of me at pull up on me, pull out on me, pull in on me. Like it's just like, wow, okay,
yep,
interesting. Yeah, I mean, of course, that's what the product is in some ways. It's a very interesting thing to have your body be the product. Whereas at least we can tell ourselves, even though it's true in theater, that to some extent our bodies and our voices are the product, but it's our soul and our artistry is in there too. But with
sure,
commercials, sometimes you're like, not a lot of
yeah,
artistry and soul. It's mostly
nope. And yeah,
just
it's
that.
like your
Yeah.
your meat, like,
Yeah,
and
your
that's hard.
meat, literally meat. Yeah, yeah, that's hard. Any other big advice? I mean, you came on this call, and the first thing I said is, "Oh my God, you look younger than the day I met you." And you said, "It's so nice having kids out of school." So many of our listeners will have kids who are still in school. For our parent listeners, I guess, what is the advice? How do you get to 4 adult children? How do we get to that place?
Um, so I will be very honest with you.
That's what we're here for.
Parenting adults is way harder than parenting toddlers. Because at least with
You're telling
toddlers,
me it gets harder than this? How dare you?
yeah, it only gets
Oh
harder
my
with
gosh.
than this and more expensive. So it's really it's double whammy fantastic. Um,
It can't get more expensive than the New York school system as we look at private schools, but okay, continue, yeah, please.
yes, well, that's fair,
Yeah,
but it
yeah,
gets different expensive, I suppose.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, my kids are all really great kids. I'm not trying to, but they're kids and
yeah,
they have flaws and they have times where they're making enough money where they can support themselves and times where they don't.
uh-huh,
And my attitude has been as long as I can help them, I
yeah,
will. I will continue to try to help them and to chase down their dreams, whatever their dreams are, as long as they're making a concerted effort
yeah,
to do it. So
yeah,
our rule is every audition you get, you take, you do it. I'm not interested in like, oh, I don't really want to do that. Like, no, no, you're doing it. This
mhm,
is your job. Your job is to audition.
mhm,
And they get it. They put up with it. Um, but I also, have to step back at this point and like they have their own lives. They have
yeah,
partners. They have, you know, other goals too. And so I just am trying to, sit back and watch and be supportive and be the cheerleader, um, and not get
How do you
too
think you
over.
did it how do you think you did it keeping those threads? I mean, you were so in my mind as of 20 whatever I was at the time, so impressed by the way you really these are 3 different human beings and 3 different experiences. How does that translate into adulthood as they, I guess, own more of their own
I continue with the same thing. These are different. All of my kids are different. They all need different things,
uh-huh.
and that you know equity and equality are two different things, so
Mhm.
sometimes like, yeah, my kids that are acting do get a little bit more financial support, or my
Mhm.
daughter who now has a child gets some more financial
Mhm.
support because she now has a child and needs help with,
Mm.
a nanny or whatever so she can go to work. Like,
Mhm.
and sometimes they don't like that. Sometimes they, like, well, that's not fair. And I'm like,
Mm.
fairness is a process. It's not a result. And the process is
Oof.
we help each other as we need it.
And only more complicated when you add in children to the mix. When you add grandchildren of going, why are you getting double this and why are they getting extra presents?" And yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, but at the same time, everybody has what they need, which is the thing that I always point out to them. I'm like, "Look,
Yeah.
y'all have what you need. Now it's the
Yeah.
wants we'll talk about." But yeah. But I mean, if your child is going to be an artist, you are most likely going to have to be providing them some kind of support, whether
Yeah.
it's
Right.
financial or a lot of emotional support of this is hard, because it is. It's really, really
Yeah.
hard, and it's really
It's
expensive
really,
to
really
live in
hard.
these cities. I mean, New York
Oof.
City,
You're
I think
telling me.
you open your eyes and it's an automatic $100 gets withdrawn from your bank account. Like, that's just how it works. Like, each day you're
Yeah.
alive,
I mean,
a minimum.
that's the joke of, when they added I forget what it's called, but when you drive into the city, it's like $15 or whatever.
Yeah,
They're like, well, we've been living in that. You get off the subway train and 20 bucks comes out of your wallet already.
exactly,
It's already
exactly.
been happening. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I love it. All right. Anything else we got to hit? We got to hit the Lakers. Are they going to stay pat of the trade deadline? What do we think? This is,
Well,
you're going to wind up
we're
with Giannis
very,
at the end
very
of this
grateful
somehow?
that the Dodger ownership has taken over. We are
Oh,
hoping
yeah.
some of the Dodger luck rubs off on the Lakers.
Except I don't think it's gonna you can't spend like, with the Dodgers, they could just spend whatever they wanna spend, right? With the NBA, there's strictures, and I don't think just pulling open the pocketbook's gonna do it all. What
Yes,
else can you do with your
yes,
money?
but the Dodgers are also known, in addition to spending, they're a really great club to
They're
work
smart.
for. So if they can like
Oh, yes.
elevate the Lakers to being the same kind of thing, like as much as people want to,
Somehow.
say nasty things about the Dodgers, like they're
Yeah.
good to their
Yeah,
employees.
people wanna work there. Well, yeah, and you already have the Laker brand. I mean, you're gonna end up with Giannis. I'm telling you, we're recording this on January 30th. With 3 days from now, somehow it's gonna end up Luka and Giannis on the same team, and you guys are gonna take over the NBA. That's what's gonna happen. How dare you?
From your lips to God's ears, man, I'm in.
I'm still hoping for my Warriors to end up with Giannis. So don't worry me. All right. Well, we'll wrap there then. Once we start getting NBA basketball, but half of our listeners are like, I'm done. I'm out. Anything you didn't get to hit? Anything else you want to add for current parents or things that you're thinking, man, I wanted to come in today. Knew I wanted to say this about. Here's what you should think about to
I
parents
just
out
want to
there.
say I applaud you all. This is a really hard process for you too. This is your baby being completely vulnerable, being judged. Um, it's going to make you a little unhinged, and that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, want you to know you're doing the right thing. You're with the right consultants, and just enjoy this time. I mean, I will say one of the upsides of the whole audition process is the amount of time I got to spend with my kids,
Uh-huh.
one on
Really
one
was.
doing these things. It really was like a very sweet thing before they go and fly off and go
Yeah.
to college. So try to enjoy the time, try to make your best use of when you have free time to grab a meal or go to a museum or go see a
Yeah.
show. Because pretty soon they are gonna be out of your house.
Ugh,
And
I love that so much. I've started saying that more recently, and I'm gonna try to keep remembering to say like we always are telling the kids have fun, like bring joy into the audition room. All the ways that fun can be kind of competitive in this process, but to tell the parents that too of like have fun. One, it'll help your kids have fun, but like make the more this process feels fun, the better you're gonna do. And then of course,
yeah,
the
and they are. I mean, one of Samara's very very best friends is a woman named Natalie who she met through MTCA, who
yeah,
auditioned with her. And yesterday she went to pick Natalie up at the doctor because Natalie was having an egg retrieval done, and like they're still,
yep,
really 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 close friends.
yes,
And it was from MTCA and from
that's so
doing
beautiful
these auditions.
from
So
this process. Yeah,
you don't know also, and some of the friends I have made, I've kept
hmm.
for all these years. So, it's stressful, but there's also really beautiful things to come out of it. And you are not your child's worth is not where he or she gets into college.
Yeah, ain't
Your
that the
worth
truth?
as a parent isn't where your kid gets into college. Your
Yes.
worth as a parent is will your child, when they're 30, still be sending you a birthday card? Don't do things that might screw that up. You know?
Oh, that now that gets into some. Now we're back to therapy. We started with therapy. Now we're back to therapy and a whole other kind of worms. But and we so appreciate the time. We all know we can check out Jag Gym if we're looking for the best gymnastics in Southern California and maybe in the country. I don't know. All of those gyms be damned. Thank you for your time, man. It was so
You're
amazing to
very
get to walk
welcome.
around
This was a
and
lot
learn.
of fun. I'm happy to come on anytime.
Yes, yes, yes. Such an awesome conversation with Anne. You're going to hear us talking about basketball at the end, right? Well, don't you know it? After AB finished with MTCA, that's Anne's second child, Anne made me an offer and said, anytime you're in LA, I want to take you to a Lakers game. Which I was like, oh my God, that's so nice of you. And wouldn't that be wonderful? But it just kind of felt like that kind of offer of like, let's get coffee when you're in the city. And we're like, ah, that probably won't actually happen. But right after we got off this podcast interview, I happened to mention, hey, I'm going to be in LA in 2 weeks, not thinking we're going to go to a Lakers game. But Ann immediately Googled and said, hey, the Lakers have a game on that Saturday night. And you want to get even crazier? The Lakers were playing the Warriors, which is my favorite team. Just a little bit of kismet there. So before I knew what was happening, we're literally finishing up the podcast interview and like bought tickets. And 2 weeks later, we're sitting center court for a Lakers Warriors game. So how about that? Podcasts leading to real life, beautiful interactions. It was an amazing time for me. That game was so fun, and I was so glad to get to kind of reconnect with Anne on that deeper level, both in this interview that you've just heard and then IRL as well. Okay, some takeaways. Let's do it. We said a decent chunk of this in the episode, but I do just think it's worth noting in that conversation about NYU academics, just the context of the conversations we had before about kind of finding that right balance for yourself with academics. I keep talking about this because I think it's one of the biggest decisions that you can make for yourself in advance, like at least the kind of range you want to look at when you talk about academics, from a little to no academics kind of BFA to a decent chunk of academics like NYU. And I think it's one of the decisions which can be a bit more concrete, right? You can't really answer the vibes question in advance, right? Maybe, hopefully, it's you get some help toward the vibes and listening to this very podcast, but you're going to get much more of a sense of that from doing the actual audition experience and really being in the room with people. But you can investigate this kind of question in advance. That's why I focus on it so much. And specifically to NYU, for many, I think it can feel like that perfect balance in what they're offering when they talk about real academics and then real conservatory style training side by side. But it's worth saying, whether we're talking about NYU, which again, NYU is about as academic as you can get when you're talking about a BFA, or any other BFA liberal arts school, when they tell you we're the best of both worlds, you're going to get both a conservatory style training and liberal arts. Just recognize that budget conversation that we've had before, right? Are you really going to get that full triple major in acting, singing, and dancing and a full fourth major in economics? I'm not going to say that you can't, but I'll say, in my experience, it is basically impossible to get that full triple major feel in a conservatory-like environment with, again, this definition of conservatory, when I say it this way, I'm talking about conservatory meaning like sequential classes with a cohort all growing together with a kind of prescriptive lesson plan. I'm not necessarily talking about the amount of academics. And then also get a full second major in a different field. And then a third thing, to also have the feel of a true liberal arts college experience. So having all three of those things, I think it's really hard to do, right? I've never heard of that happening. I don't know if that's what Samara felt like she was missing in this case. So maybe that's what it felt like she was saying. But I know for a lot of people, the traditional liberal arts college experience has a sense of exploration alongside of it, right? And that's what I think is the hardest thing to replace. If you're getting a full musical theater BFA, it's hard to get that experience of exploration also. You can certainly explore within the musical theater world in lots of different programs, right? When you're talking about taking different kinds of theater classes, different industry related classes, absolutely. And you can do a bit of gentle exploration outside of liberal arts for a lot of schools. So you're taking all of your conservatory style classes in the theater school and then getting a little sample of liberal arts can happen. But I've not heard of a case where someone was getting all three of those elements, where you're getting that rigorous sequential musical theater BFA, another major in a different field, and still have time to do a bit of that dabbling, exploring, right? That idea can be the hallmark of what is a liberal arts education for many people. And to get all three of those elements, I think it's really hard. Now, listeners out there, please prove me wrong. If you were that case who had all three of those, let me know, right? But I just think it's just another way of having that same argument we've had before about budget. When you talk about your time can only be allocated in so many different ways. So I'm a big believer, I've heard me say this before, that there's no such thing as the perfect balance out there. It's not one school that has the perfect balance. There's only the right balance for you and what you're looking for in this moment. And often when I say even in this moment, I really should phrase it as like what you think you're looking for at this point in the process. Since going through the process and having that experience, it often can shift that delicate balance. That's why I talk about a range of it as opposed to saying I'm exactly a 60-40 person, because it really can shift for you. Okay, I know I talk about that way too much, and I've talked about it in a lot of different episodes, but I do think it's one of the big learnings of the way I think about all these different schools, now really seeing the landscape after doing this for 20 years. And it's something that I'm not sure all of our families are keyed in and thinking about in that way. So I talk about it a lot. Okay, the other thing I was going to say on that question of fit, I also really like that conversation that Anne was talking about with Miles and Carnegie Mellon. You know, it's such a hard place to get to for students, but if you can get to that place of you're really investigating together, are we the right fit for you as much as are you the right fit for us? It's absolutely what the process should be. And it's what the process is. It's just that most students are so focused on the can I get in part? And of course, understandably so, you want to get into all these schools. But I'll say I'm very proud of CMU being able to recognize, hey, I'm not sure we're the right program to serve your unique human self, Miles, and all of what that meant for Miles in 2014. And that they recognize there would be another program that might serve Miles better. And I'll just say that happens more often than you realize. And not just in cases of like distinct identity discussions where there might not be enough support, in some of the ways we're talking about this episode. There's also just like much subtler cases of like, you're super talented, there's a lot going on there, but your specific talent doesn't necessarily spark me as much as I think it will other programs, right? Or, I think that same idea can happen with voices and voice qualities for people who are more focused on the voice, right? It's just like dating. I can't believe I'm going to do another dating metaphor. Man, I'm really hitting all my favorite things. The dating metaphors, talking about academics, we're hitting all the stuff, right? But that's the thing that you do in dating of like, it should be about, do you spark me and do I spark you? I know that seems a little gooey when you're talking about something as big and official as like getting into college, but it's really how it works in a lot of these cases, especially at the most competitive programs where you're talking about a small group of people and you're deciding between a group of people who are all really talented. Anne said it's all random, which I'm glad she was able to get over that. We pulled her over to the idea of subjective, which I like better than the word random. But I will say there is absolutely no rhyme or reason to why some people spark other people, at least not that I know of. Don Wadsworth, who I've talked about a lot of times, previous podcast guest, he really got my sense of humor. He really appreciated my intelligence. He thought I was the bee's knees, right? And that's why I got into Carnegie Mellon. Was I objectively more talented than kids who didn't get in? Of course not, right? I was a talented 18-year-old kid, but I wasn't more talented than my best friend Alejandro, who got into Juilliard but didn't get into Carnegie Mellon. But to Don, I was the right fit. The point I'm trying to make is it's about the mutuality of it all. I sparked Don, but Don sparked me too. I was really inspired by him. I thought his class was the greatest. I thought I had so much to learn from him. I was like, if I could sit and learn from this person for 4 years, I will be so inspired. there was mutuality at play, right? And that really then expanded outward to all the faculty at CMU. It just happened that Dawn was the one I met first, right? But often it starts with that experience of one person behind a table who really gets you and you really get them and grows from there. And there's a difference between recognizing that someone is talented, which obviously Carnegie Mellon did with Miles, and saying, yes, you're talented and you really do it for me. And I really know how to teach you and I want to teach you. And I think you'll be a fit here, right? Okay, let's wrap with a quick hit on entrepreneurship, which is to say, the reason I talk so much about entrepreneurship, it's not just because I started a business. I mean, I do think it's helpful for artists to think about entrepreneurship in case they want to be future Ann Josephsons or future Charlie Murphys. And the reason we do talk about it a lot on the show, whatever the field that you might get into, we have seen so many of our students start really cool side hustle kinds of businesses and be really successful. I'm all into that. But the reason I talk about it a lot on the show is really more as a mindset that I think is helpful for young actors in that idea that we've talked about of you need to be the CEO of your own business in this field, right? It's not that you necessarily have to think CEO in terms of that kind of corporate talk, but you do have to figure out your own version of like how you can be your own visionary. You think about your own brand, you're your own salesperson, and you're your own operations department, especially at the beginning when you don't have a full team who are doing some of these things, right? All of the aspects of an independent business as Charlie Murphy actor, every ounce of knowledge of like basic capitalism and how business works, it will all serve you in this field. We often joke in these meetings in the college process that parents will fill some of those roles. Parents might be the admin assistants or the travel agents or all the different roles that parents are going to play that are really part of that like corporate structure. But there's really truth to that, right? The corporation starts as early as now at 16, 17. And certainly by the time you graduate, it's like you want to be ready for that IPO. You want to have all these things in place, right? And the sooner really you're able to wrap your head around at least the basic idea of that kind of thinking, around that mindset, the sooner you're going to be ready for success in this business. Or, and the reason I talk about in this context with this episode, the sooner you might realize, hey, this business isn't something I want to monetize. I might love this art form, but do I love the idea of turning it into a business and actually monetizing and corporatizing this? Or is it in fact more of a hobby and maybe you're going to monetize another skill set of yours, like I talked about with that baseball analogy for me? And I'm just going to end where I began, which is that idea of whatever skill set you all choose to monetize, whether it's that BFA you get in school or something else that you choose to actually make money off of, we love and support you as MTCA alumni and are incredibly proud of all of your success in the world. Not just these 3 alumni, but all the hundreds of alumni, thousands of alumni now over the past 20 years. Okay, let's wrap there on another episode of Mapping the College Audition, produced by Kelly Prendergast with social media work by Jordan Rice. Like and subscribe wherever you can do so. Follow us on social media at Mapping the College Audition on Instagram and write us a rating and review if you're feeling crazy. And of course, check us out at MTCA.com for help with your individual college prep needs and see if you can give Anne a run for her money with the most money spent at MTCA. I believe in you. Those Lakers tickets won't even count against the total, I promise. To my young artists out there mapping their journeys, please trust that you're enough for the right program exactly as you are. Now keep striving. We'll catch you next week.